Hi there, my name is Michael Hill with Canine Chronicle TV, and I am excited to be joined with Kristyn Stout of Triumphant Brittany's for our next feature for Next Gen, focusing on the younger generation of dog show professionals. Kristyn, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So let's start with how you got started in the sport of dogs.
So I got started, like a lot of people, through my parents. My mom started out in Brittany's when she was about 17 or 18 years old. She was sort of a tomboy growing up and had very old school parents that wanted her to kind of do the girly girl thing. And she was insistent that she was going to go out and hunt with her dad and her brothers. And they wanted no part of her doing that and said, nope, we won't take you and you can't go by yourself. So being the determined and sort of smart aleck person that she is, she went out and got herself a hunting dog to take with her so she wouldn't be by herself. So she ended up with a Brittany and it sort of took off from there. And she started actually field trialing and hunt testing first, and then ran into a couple of kind of old school breeders that were very much of the dual mentality and said, hey, you have a really nice dog. You should take him and show him. And she actually ended up with her first dual champion within a few years of starting, who was also a roan, which is a little bit unprecedented for that time. And it sort of took off from there. And when I was born, I couldn't get in the ring fast enough, and it took off from there. So.
Was she doing hunting at the same time still when you were born, or had it transitioned more so to
Absolutely. Yeah, she's actually a AKC licensed field trial and hunt test judge as well. So she was very active. So we would go to dog shows in the summer and the winter, and then in the spring and the fall when it was hunt test and field trial season, a lot of times I would go with her and ride horses and ride races and help plant birds and things like that. So I was definitely raised to be a little dual Brittany person.
That's amazing. And you're still breeding. I know you had several litters this year, right, during quarantine?
Yes, it was actually kind of a blessing of quarantine, because a lot of times I'll have this breeding in mind and I'll either have to hold off and wait, or be like, hey mom, I'm gonna do this breeding, can you whelp them for me so that I don't have to keep pushing it off? And truly my favorite thing is to raise puppies, to kind of cultivate, decide what you're gonna keep, partner up with people to find new show people, new show homes. So that's truly my favorite part of the sport, is kind of cultivating your line and continuing on that way. So this year being able to have litters has been so much fun, and I sort of miss it now that we're back to the grind again.
And speaking of grind, you're hitting it pretty hard. You have a top ranked dog right now. Tell us about that.
I do. It's super exciting. That has been an unbelievable ride, especially since it's one that I was lucky enough to get to co-breed with a couple of my clients. I campaigned his mother, who actually holds the best in show and specialty record for Gordon Setter bitches, and she was sort of my first real big winner beyond my own breed. So that was definitely an awesome way to kind of kickstart becoming a young professional. And when she retired, as sort of a thank you, because I'd become very involved in the breed and finishing a lot of them and helping grade litters and things like that, which is what I'd love to do. They said, hey, would you want to co-breed this litter with us? And his co-owners are the Huntsingers, and they actually love to hang on to their girls. They have generation after generation of beautiful bitches, and they're all their house pets. They keep them intact because they're breeding animals. And they had one boy out of the litter, and they were like, oh, he's so beautiful, but we don't really want to keep another boy because they already had one male in their house. And I was like, you know what? Send him to me. I'll run him on. So I got him at 4 months old. That was Gavin. And 6 years later, here we are.
Where are you guys at right now this weekend? I know you're at a hotel, so you're at a show somewhere, right?
Yeah. So I've been in Perry, Georgia. I actually got home I was at the Brittany National last weekend. About halfway home was Montgomery, Alabama. So I stopped off on Sunday, met up with David. He was showing Gavin for the weekend, showed him for the day, continued on home. And the next day we left to come here. So it's definitely been a whirlwind end of the year, beyond just showing Gavin, going to the Brittany National and being able to do that as well. So it's a super busy time of year for us.
Jumping back in with both feet.
Absolutely, but couldn't have it any other way. That's how we usually are. So it's our normal again.
That's great. Did you know when you were young that this is what you wanted to do, like full time as a job, or when did that kind of become apparent to you?
I did and I didn't. I always knew I wanted to be involved, but I actually was going to college to become an accountant. I got about halfway through and I was like, I couldn't imagine just sitting at a desk, just sitting in class. I'm thinking about like, okay, so I have this class, this class, this class, and then I get to go to the dog show. So it was always something that I sort of felt like I was missing out when my friends were going to shows and apprenticing and all that. And I kind of took a step back for a little bit. So I worked for a few awesome, super talented handlers that I would not be here without. And from there, I was sort of like, I was in my mid-20s and it seemed like kind of the right transition. And when Winnie came along, they kind of said, hey, would you be interested in showing this bitch for us? And so I sort of started handling almost because I had these Gordon Setter people that wanted me to continue on because their previous handler was Kristyn, who a bunch of people would know. I was the last person to work for her and she was heavily involved in the Gordon Setter breed. So I sort of stepped in when she took a step back and she's now doing hair and married and has a family. So she took a step back and I continued on as she phased out. So that's sort of how
you fell into it.
Sort of, yeah.
That's awesome. And so speaking of handlers you worked for, who were some other people other than your mom, of course, that were the most influential in your start in dogs?
I worked for Janice Hayes, Clinton Karen Livingston, Kristyn. When I was really little, I helped Diana Mason, Candy Carswell, Shelly DeChambeau, who's super involved in our setters. So a lot of sporting dog people that I just thought were people I really wanted to learn from when I was a kid, even when I wasn't traveling on the road, just people that took great care of their dogs, that were great groomers, people I really wanted to work for. And even after I stopped working for people, there are so many handlers that are out there that sort of like took me under their wing and helped me continue on learning. Like
planning a campaign.
Incredible. There's a whole bit of so many people that have truly helped, even with just basic things like, hey, I was watching your dog, maybe try this with this trim. Because everybody in this sport is such a student, from day one, continuing on, you can never learn enough from the people around you. So I always feel if you feel like you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So I always try to kind of learn from the people that, are so much more experienced and have so much to teach. So
I love that. I think that's also like a great point about how there are so many people who are willing to teach.
Absolutely.
If given the opportunity,
you have to be willing to learn. Yeah.
I love that. How did David come along? How did that happen?
That's sort of a funny story. We met at the garden, like everybody else has met at the garden. But I was campaigning Winnie. It was her final year, and I was planning to go to some shows in Florida. And, when you're campaigning a dog, you kind of want to be quiet about where you're going. And I didn't go out of my area that often because I was so young and not really into traveling by myself. So I was at the show in Virginia. I'm like looking around. I'm like, who could I set up with in Florida? And David had always been super nice. And so I went over and I was like, hey, I'm coming to these Florida shows. Do you mind if I set up with you? And he was super nice about it. Sure, no problem. Just let me know what you need because I was flying. And it just kind of took off from there. We talked every day after, and he's been the most incredible support system through all this. I'm not sure that I could do what I've done with Gavin without him. He just keeps me so focused and on track and takes care of so many things at home. And when I'm, at shows by myself, he makes it so that I can do this, which is incredible. To have that support system is super important on some level.
Definitely different than doing it by yourself.
Absolutely.
I love that. And, how has it been juggling the personal relationship side of things and then the working relationship side of things with David? Have you learned things over time?
Absolutely. We're both super focused on, what we're doing and taking care of the dogs and all those sorts of things. So at home, we definitely try to take some time just for us, even just to go to a nice dinner or, just go do something together that's not dogs. We're both especially now, where we're traveling so much to get to these certain shows, when you do have that time at home, just to be able to do something a little bit normal together is so nice. You know, we're both huge movie buffs. So even just to like take a night to just like curl up and watch a good movie. And, you know, I love to cook. That. So, you know, we always try to make time to do certain things like that. Weeks like this, it's hard, but we definitely
But then after it, you can recharge that way.
Absolutely. It's so helpful to just be able to do something that's not dog related.
Yeah, I love that. That's like, I think that's the whole life work balance thing, which for an industry where you are kind of working 24/7, it takes some creativity to find ways to not burn out.
Definitely. We're both so laser focused and intense about what we're doing, especially when we're campaigning a dog. I mean, it's always a joint effort of, you know, working out the schedule, working out just things like that, where you need to kind of like take it down, dial it back, and just kind of regroup and shift your focus on, okay, we're still people, and you gotta look at it that way.
Absolutely. And we all have limitations, and we all have to like outsource for help sometimes, and also just say like, I can't, because it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Sure.
Let's switch to talking about your breeds, specifically the Brittany's and Gordon setters. What you would say are priorities for what makes a great one, and things that you're focusing on in your breeding program right now.
Well, just coming back from the Brittany National, I'm like, it almost like recharges you and shifts your focus of where you want to go with things, you know, seeing different dogs, seeing different breedings that people are doing. It sort of sparks some inspiration, you know, no matter who you are, how experienced you are, because your national is, I think it's one of the most important things to attend. No matter if you're just starting or you're, you know, like me, where I've spent my whole life in Brittany's, and especially with a new breed in Gordon's, I think I've only missed one Gordon National since I've been a handler. So I think when you're trying to learn, that is the best way to go. I had a great time because, I mean, even just the dogs that we were taking to show, my mom and I had probably 8 dogs between the two of us. We had some young hopefuls and some that, you know, are specials or veterans. We had a whole different array, but it was also seeing what other people were doing with like the stud dogs of ours that they've bred to, because we've had a few very prominent stud dogs that have produced beautifully, and just seeing what people are doing, integrating our lines with theirs. Yeah, so I was super excited because I bred this litter actually over the winter before COVID started. And I really felt like this puppy dog and then his brother, who actually went to the stud owner, were probably 2 of the better puppies that I've bred in recent years. And the 2 of them had barely gotten to be shown, and they went in there and did so great. So I was super proud of that. And I think going forward, there are a couple of dogs that we have that I'm really, really excited about. And then I have a couple of young puppies that were like just too young for the national. So going forward with them, I'm really excited about, but just being able to sit there and go, okay, I'm going to keep my eye on these handful of dogs as stud dogs. And then seeing my mom's dogs, because she and I live 14 hours apart. So even when her dogs are that 6 months to a year older, seeing how they've grown up. I have a couple of young stud dogs I brought with me that she hadn't gotten to see since the beginning of the year. So just things like that have been really great.
The ability to like pool those brains together, you know, in your family.
Absolutely, yeah.
I love that. Many hands, right?
The dog that won the national is actually out of a bitch that I bred too, which was so exciting.
Oh, amazing.
We definitely, the fruits of our labor come together. It was really great. Yeah.
That it's showing that the bloodline is producing, right? That's fabulous. I think, you know, you're a great example to talk about connection in the sport, because you have your mom in the sport, your partners in the sport, you've worked for so many people in the sport. What would you say you would recommend to newcomers getting involved, and like how to go about forming those connections in a practical way if you're not being born into it?
I think when you find a breed that you love, find somebody who breeds dogs that you love, and kind of try to learn from them. Learning from a breeder has been the biggest blessing for me and for David, because we were both raised by breeders. David's mom, before she stopped showing dogs, she was very active in Australian Shepherds, and before that, Rottweilers as a breeder. So I think when you learn from a breeder first and learn the fundamentals of your own breed, it becomes a good starting point, whether you want to be a professional or if you just want to show your own dogs. Having a good working knowledge of basic structure, basic care of your animals, learning about whelping and raising litters and puppies and things like that. I think that's kind of a step that a lot of people skip over now that I'm so thankful to have had. And then as far as wanting to be a better handler, once you feel like you have a good grasp of your breed, find somebody who presents your breed well also and learn from them. Whether it's somebody who you like their grooming, you like how they show them, you like the bond they have with their dog. Never stop learning and learn from multiple people. I couldn't even name you just one person that I said, yeah, I could say, yeah, this is the person that made me who I am today. I could name you 10 or 20 that I'm like, they gave me something so valuable that I may not have learned if I didn't know them. So I would say find people you admire, find people that you respect and that you enjoy being around that are willing to help you. I think there are more professionals and more breeders that are willing to help than not. And people just need to figure out, a good downtime, whether it's after the show or even to just like get on Facebook and shoot them a message and say, hey, if we're ever at the same show, I'd love to talk. I mean, we're all people. We all have busy schedules and all that. But I think everybody in the sport is willing to help cultivate and teach. And so I think just reaching out and putting yourself out there is so important.
I think it's such a great point to make about that there are more willing to help than not, because it can be overwhelming when you come into the sport and you don't know anyone and not sure what's like normal. But like you said, more often than not, people want to share what they've learned with other people. And then on top of it, like this year has shown just how we can work around location and distance via technology. So you can FaceTime and call and text and Facebook Messenger and all that kind of stuff to connect with the people who are really the people that you want to be like and shape your own kind of path from.
Right. I think one of the best things and the most fun for me that I was able to do during this time is I actually did a Facebook Live Brittany seminar with the Brittany's that I have at home. So I think that having the time to do things like that had been such a blessing in such a strange year. But I know a bunch of other people had done it too, like Doug and Jamie did it with their Clumbers and their Sussex, and they've continued on doing litter evals. So things like that, I mean, that just shows how many people are out there that are willing to put themselves out there and help people learn. I got so many messages afterwards with questions or just people that were, inspired to learn more. So I'm like, if I can do something like that, or even just help somebody at a show with grooming or just a quick tip, if it helps somebody, I feel like I'm doing my job. So
absolutely. And you're paying it forward to the next generation. That's really what it's about. I think that's such a great point about how, with technology, especially, like we have the ability to access so many people. And so I think also for those who are in the sport, thinking creatively about seeing what you guys and Jamie and Doug have done and thinking about how they might be able to do similar is important as well, so that we can offer as much as possible to people who are trying to do their best, especially at a time like this when it's harder to get to dog shows. There's not as many dog shows. Breeders might not want you coming to their house, et cetera.
Harder to get to handling class. I mean, it's just all, but I would say where there's the will, there's a way. So, I mean, for our youngsters, whenever we had anybody stop by the house, I would be like, I have this puppy. Do you mind just like petting it and giving it a cookie before you go? I mean, you really just need to find the loopholes and, work with what you've got. So I think there's always a way to work around these things.
Creativity and resilience, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kristyn, for taking the time during your very busy week. And we wish you all the best at Perry with Gavin and all the other dogs you guys are showing, and hope to see you guys soon in person.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.